It is Thursday, January 12th. Today is a wonderful, beautiful day outside. It is like 60 degrees up here in the Beltway. Global warming is doing its thing. I'm loving it. Let's get to it, though. So today on the show, a little bit about being a conservative. Yet again, this is the third day in a row with this. Why be a conservative? A little news on Islam again. An update on the Palestinian terrorist attack. And also an update on the Philly soda tax. The mayor has been speaking out against the businesses in the Philadelphia area. And then I will get to the dumb leftist comment of the day. This is not a unknown figure. It is a well-known person. Just want to expose what she said today. And that will be about it. It's going to be a relatively short episode today. So let's just get right to it, starting with why be a conservative. So right now there's a cultural war happening, and it's been happening for a very long time. I mean, this is not a new thing. Decades, and really, if you want to look back to Plato times, I mean, generations and generations. But as it pertains to America, as America has evolved, as technology and business has created new fronts for the war, more and more people are becoming aware of it. The divide we feel today did not happen overnight. Many people knew the war was occurring when the battles were more subtle even, but not everyone did. So why pick the side of conservatism in this war? Well, because power tends to flow in one direction. Think of conservatism as the brakes on the car that is America. There will never be hope of getting, there will never be a time when government has no power. The time government has no power is the time that a nation ceases to even be a nation. So there's never any worry about that. You never need to worry that, say you're a fan of socialism, you never need to worry that there's no hope. You never need to worry, because there's always hope for socialism and collectivism to take hold in a nation as long as there's a government, because government power is always ever expanding. It's constantly finding ways to award power to itself so that it can continue to grow. And once it does, it tends to grow pretty quickly. I mean, just since 1965, we've had, back in 1965, there was like single-digit federal agencies, number of federal agencies. And it is now in like the, like 70 or something. I don't know. It's insane. It's unbelievable how much it's expanded just in 40 years' time. The number of pages in the Federal Code of Regulations went from like 25,000, which already sounds pretty ridiculous if you're a small business owner trying to figure that out. But it's expanded to 175,000, and that's just since 1965. Look how much has happened in that span of time outside of that. I mean, there's just the power and the different Supreme Court rulings that have allowed these things to happen. And even prior to 1965, in the early 1900s, there was a lot of things happening that opened the floodgates as far as spending. I'll go into and deep dive into that later in a different show maybe. But it's very interesting to read up on some of the old Supreme Court cases that allowed, the expansion of the welfare state, getting into some of the cases with what the word welfare even meant in the, by the founders. And I assure you it didn't mean what we see today, but I'll get back to my original point here. So when the founders came to be, limited government was easy for them. Now, why was it so easy? Well, they were starting from scratch. They didn't need to worry about, centuries of government expansion taking hold yet. Like they had a lot of checks and balances in place so that it wouldn't happen. And honestly, if it weren't for them, it would have happened a lot sooner, as we've seen with many other countries. I mean, it takes hold and it just drags the country to the bottom of the toilet, or the bottom of the barrel. So anyway, the founders clearly constructed it with that principle in mind: limited government. However, conservatism acts only as the brakes to an expanding government power. Once the Supreme Court decisions are made, all kinds of sweeping and permanent changes can be made to the nation. I mean, just in the past 100 years, this nation has been swept into Class 6 rapids. Class 6 whitewater rapids of government expansion. I mean, even if you love socialism, you're highly likely to get your way no matter what side you take. It doesn't matter. Socialism is always going to be a real possibility, or at least some level of it is always going to take hold. So I would say be a conservative to put the brake pads a little, to give them a little more wear. Let them survive a little longer. I mean, even if you want socialism, it's probably not wise to just rush right into it. I mean, I'm always going to be against it, but if you're for it, I'm just saying you can't be like all in. Don't just flip the nation overnight. That's not what this nation was founded on. It's going to have catastrophic results. I was recently also reading a book by Greg Gutfeld from The Five on Fox News. Funny guy. Always has some very interesting points to make. And his book is titled How to Be Right, The Art of Being Persuasively Correct. And I just want to read a few things from that book because I think everybody could learn a little bit from it. So let me pull it up here. Well, for starters, he says, in relating to socialism, he says, and liberals in general, he says there's never going to be a shortage of liberals because there's always going to be teenagers. Paraphrasing, but that's a great point. I mean, it's something you should probably evaluate. If your ideology, your political ideology, aligns with that of like whatever, I don't know the exact stats on it, but like 80% of or 90% of 18 to 22 year olds, you should be seriously reevaluating your political stance. You should probably wonder if your political stance is a little short-sighted and immature. When 18 to 22 year olds overwhelmingly embrace your political ideology, that should be a very serious problem. If that happened to conservatism, I would actually be calling it out. Like, what are we doing that's making all of these immature young people so infatuated with our ideology? And on the left, no one's ever going to evaluate, themselves and wonder why we have all these people just blindly giving us support, whether it's, young millennials or 95% of African Americans. Unbelievable how that number is so high, given that they were the party of slaves and Jim Crow. But anyway, I think it's worth considering that before, when you're worried about the youth and the way they vote, just know that there's always going to be teenagers. There's always going to be people who have zero information yet, but tons of feelings, tons of emotion behind their, always looking to make a big change for their generation. And some of those changes are good, and some of them, not so good at all. But I think it's worth trying to convince some of them as they mature, maybe, around 24 to 25 range, they start getting into the workforce. That's where you got to really start trying to talk sense to a lot of these people. And a lot of them are going to learn it and come around anyway. a lot of people find their way to conservatism later in life, when they're responsible working adults paying taxes. I mean, who really wants to pay more taxes than they need to? So another thing that Greg Gutfeld mentioned in his book, and again, paraphrasing, he said that liberalism is the hammock that rests between the two trees of capitalism. And there's a great point there, because without capitalism, without all of the profits and all of the foundation of success and prosperity in a nation, you couldn't have a socialist country. Look at Venezuela. And they even had a lot of prosperity before. I mean, relatively speaking, for a South American country, they had a lot of oil, they had a lot of money, really, but it was completely run into the ground by socialism. The trees weren't sturdy enough. The hammock, whoever got on the hammock, was a little too fat. And the tree fell, the hammock fell, and pretty much made a dent in the ground. And it would happen here too. We're not too big to fail. Especially as you keep loading up on cheeseburgers before you hop into that hammock. I mean, if you go full-blown socialism, they're talking about, like, I think Bernie Sanders was talking about 20-some more trillion in spending. I mean, we are at 20 trillion right now, and we just doubled it in the past 8 years. How on earth can we keep doubling the national debt and ever expect to recover from that and not suffer negative economic consequences from that? So liberalism, certainly leftism and far leftism, the socialist, democratic, all that mumbo jumbo, the collectivist side, it is the hammock that rests between the trees of capitalism. He also compares it to that the house of capitalism is being infected by the roaches of liberalism, meaning they're eating away at the foundation of capitalism. All liberals and all, or at least liberal ideas, I'm not talking about people, I'm only talking about ideas. I know I mentioned Bernie Sanders, but I have nothing against him. It's just, I'm talking the ideas. It requires being able to remove the ideas from the individuals who are pushing for the ideas. I have nothing against the people until they start infringing on me personally, but especially in a physical way, you start getting into the dictators of the world, and they're doing, have a bunch of human rights atrocities that need to be addressed. But I'm just saying, individually, whatever. But your ideas, they're open for debate. I'm going to debate the heck out of those ideas. And when you're talking about socialism, all it can do, even democratic socialism, any collectivist idea, all it can do is eat away at prosperity. There's nothing, it doesn't generate itself, it doesn't generate or regenerate prosperity, it only leeches. It's a leech. It's filled with blood, and it looks like it has a ton of, potential, but on the inside, it's all just blood that it sucked from capitalism. That's all it did. If you didn't have America already built up, already great, there is no chance that a full-blown, socialism could ever work. And even democratic socialism would begin to fail. I mean, the economy would start to come to a screeching halt pretty quickly. So, with that said, I will move on from Greg Gutfeld quotes. Let me just see if there's any other ones here. He has quite a few that are pretty hilarious. But, well, here's another one. He says it's the same concept. It says conservatism makes what liberalism takes. So, that's exactly what it says there. I mean, you can see exactly what it means there. Let's see here. Oh yeah, this is another good one. So as a veteran, I do have to ask, where are all of the liberal 4-star generals? Where are they? I don't know where these generals are. I've not seen any of them. Where are here's more from Greg Upfield. Where are the left-wing brain surgeons? How come there are no progressive NFL quarterbacks? And I don't think he means Colin Kaepernick. He means in mindset. You aren't progressive in mindset if you made it to be an NFL quarterback. Why? Because you had to take personal responsibility to learn the playbook, master your art, get your body into peak physical condition, and you took 100% of the responsibility for making that happen. No one else could go do that for you. No one could donate a little bit of that to you. You had coaches. There were people who helped contribute, but ultimately, just like going to the gym, I can't go run on the treadmill so that you have a six-pack. There's nothing progressive or liberal in mindset when it comes to any of these things, like to make it to any of these positions, because you have to take 100% responsibility and, carry the ball yourself. It's just unbelievable how much of a smear campaign has been, put on conservatism, but all of the most successful people have conservatism, at least the ideology, to thank for their success, because that's the formula. It's very simple. Personal responsibility. So moving on, I think it's also really important to realize, and I think most conservatives already do, that leftists fail to see that conservatives live in a liberal world. And what I mean by a liberal world is that conservatives can't escape liberalism, at least the present day form of liberalism. There's one major cable news network, that's Fox News, and there's one major national paper, which is the Wall Street Journal, who are conservative in slant. And I'm openly saying, yeah, they're conservative in slant. I'm not denying that. But tell me what ones besides those two, name other ones. National, major ones. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS. You can go into like some of the horrible networks like the MTV and all those. I mean, ESPN, all of them. They're completely leftist. Hardcore. So, I mean, on top of that, you have the entire education system. You have Hollywood. Obviously, Hollywood. Everything is leftist. Outside of Fox News and the Wall Street Journal, conservatives are forced to live in the leftist world, at least explore their minds every single day, because it's always being pumped out to us. So when leftists go nuts, when they're exposed to conservatism, I mean, you just have to laugh at it. Like, what kind of bubble are you living in? I mean, half the people of this country are conservatives, and you're telling me it's that foreign to you? You feel so under attack whenever you even just have to hear a view that's contrary to what you believe. I mean, how elitist is that, really? So leftists obviously tend to live near the cities, and almost none of the public domain is slanted to conservatism, so they don't really have to deal with conservatism. That's why there's such a hoopla about, any conservative view, and it's always such a huge deal. Like, I don't know, no matter who you talk to, if they're a liberal, I almost can guarantee that if you try and express a conservative thought, or hell, even try and listen to something conservative, or just put Fox News on, and it's not the news is on. It's like the evil Republicans are talking down to me, or I'm, whereas if you put CNN on, it's like in their minds, it's like you have neutral news on. No, you have very, very slanted left news on, And I'm not saying that Fox News isn't slanted right. I'm just saying that almost the entire public domain, as your living experience, is very slanted left. Yet, even with that said, conservatives make up half of the country, as I said, and according to the last election, they make up 3 million square miles versus 530,000 square miles to Democrats. Again, 3 million to 530,000 square miles. So I'm sure some of you have seen the Trump versus Hillary voting map. I mean, it totally looks like the Verizon Wireless coverage map. It's completely red, and very small little pockets are Hillary supporters. And you can literally see the bubbles. You can actually look at the bubbles. Just look at the map and you can see the bubbles. I happen to be living in one. So, a lot of people around here don't realize how much of a bubble it is, but anyway, I deal with it. So one thing to celebrate now is that people are focused or they're forced to listen to the other side again. Now, they might make a huge deal of it. They might not really want to hear it, but they're forced to listen now, especially as the media is being completely exposed. They have been caught with their pants down, basically. They look bad. It's a bad look. The optics, I don't know how they're going to, even recover. How you're ever going to be considered objective journalists ever again at, CNN. Certainly at BuzzFeed. I don't think they ever were. But, you're basically when you go to the checkout lane and you're looking at the National Enquirer. That's what you're talking. That's just the CNN and BuzzFeed are the new media forms of that. The CNN is the network version of that, and BuzzFeed is the internet version of that now. So whether or not people join conservatives, it remains to be seen, but at least the message is out there, buried somewhere beneath the fake news and smear campaigns and rhetoric. So next up, in Islam being Islam news, I want to give an update on the Palestinian terrorist who used a truck to run over some Israeli soldiers. So I think it was a few episodes back I talked about that. And then a couple episodes before that, I talked that, Palestine is sickening and disgraceful. It's disgraceful that our administration is siding with them with the UN resolution that ends Israel and their building of settlements in their own capital city of Jerusalem. So I just want to quick update you on what happened. So the widow of this evil piece of junk, the one who ran over the Israeli soldiers, the Palestinian terrorist, she, the widow, is receiving a lifetime allowance. It's like she won a scratch off, like the Palestinian terrorism scratch off. She got three bombs. She scratched off 3 bombs, and that is good for $760 for the rest of her life each month, US dollars equivalent, for the rest of her month, because of her husband, who is a martyr, or as most of us people call it, evil, homicidal, radical Islamic terrorist. But we're just splitting hairs. So the Palestinian government is actually giving money, and I mentioned that they were paying money for terrorist acts, and I wasn't joking. It's actually, the number actually came out. They're not even hiding this. They could hide this number. It's public. They know these are not moral people. They are not civil people. They are not interested in a 2-state solution. They're absolute evil terrorists. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I'm not saying all of them are, but the government is, and a good chunk of the people, certainly the majority in the Gaza Strip, they're voting in Hamas. So I just wanted to, you to remember this story the next time that, people are trying to draw moral equivalencies between these two nations, it's unreal. It's not even close. One is a terrorist-sponsored government, and one is a Western and the only Western democracy in the Middle East. It's unreal. How do they do this? How do they get away with trying to draw moral equivalencies? And, people on like CNN and many other on the left just go right along with it. So another thing to keep in mind, just recently, Israel had a soldier who killed a Palestinian aggressor who was, laying on the ground injured, and he was non-threatening, but he killed him. And because of that, he's facing 20 years in jail or in prison in Israel. So an Israeli soldier kills a Palestinian aggressor wrongly. I'm totally on board. That's wrong. But the Palestinian terrorist runs over a bunch of innocent soldiers, not attacking them. He wasn't being attacked. And the Palestinian government gives settlement money, gives a lifetime allowance to the widow. I mean, they're actually paying people to be terrorists in Palestine. So just remember that. And by the way, on a related note, President Obama is unlikely to be able to receive a lifetime membership at a prestigious golf course in Maryland he used to golf at. The reason for this, and it's like $80,000 upfront cost and like $10,000 a year to join the country club, and he will not be invited or welcome because it's a Jewish-founded golf club up there in Maryland, and frankly, almost all of the club members are just sickened by this UN resolution that the president basically, stabbed Israel in the back. And finally, the Jewish, Israelis are coming around. I mean, so often, a lot of them have been Democrats for years, and finally they're wising up to it that, oh wow, yeah, they really actually don't like us. I mean, there's been a lot of talk of anti-Semitism thrown around at the incoming administration, but I find it funny that there's a certain outgoing president who is no longer welcome at a Jewish golf course because of his, I won't call it anti-Semitism, but you be the judge. But the Jewish folks are not super happy with the president. Not happy at all. So next up, the Philly soda tax update. I'm not sure how much you remember, or maybe you haven't heard of this, but in Philadelphia, the Democratic mayor, I believe his name is Jim Kenney, he and his constituents have decided that the public needs to be taxed. Well, not really the public, but it ends up having the same effect. So every ounce of soda and other sugary drinks, or even mildly sugary drinks like Propel water, I mean, basically if it's a liquid that's not water or alcohol based, it's going to be taxed. And it's not a small tax. It's like up to 50%. I mean, it's a huge tax. Like if you say you bought like a fountain case of fountain syrup, and it's normally like 50 or 60 bucks, it could be like a $40 to $50 tax on that. We're talking a massive tax. And the update I have here is that the mayor who put this in and pushed for this is upset with the businesses for price gouging now, the customers, because they implemented the tax at the distribution level. So the distributors, ship the product to the businesses, say the 7-Eleven, and the 7-Eleven is then, paying extra money for the same product that he was paying, say he was paying $60 for that same product on December 30th or 31st. On the first of the year, he's now paying, double that. And these Democratic politicians in Philadelphia somehow didn't think that this would trickle down to the customer. Like, what do you expect? Are you retarded? I mean, really? Like, are you cannot gaslight us like this. Like, you think you try and tell us that we're just being crazy, saying that it's going to affect, the end customer eventually. The consumers are going to be paying this tax. It's just a tax on the poor. I mean, get the hell out of town with this stuff. You're just taxing the poor with this. That's all you're doing. And you can try and demonize the small businesses all you want, but I do not feel bad for you guys. You're trying to make us, hate on 7-Eleven or, Ted's convenience store or wherever. Ain't gonna happen. You guys are being greedy. You're trying to take money from these businesses that are barely getting by in this economy, and you're like doubling their taxes on soda. I mean, that's attacking a specific industry. And what if your only product that you sell is beverages, like you're a convenience store? This is a massive infringement on your business. I mean, it's unreal. Like, this is unacceptable, and frankly, it's going to be repealed. I know it will, because this stuff won't last. People are outraged, even Democrats. But that's what usually happens when the taxes are implemented and they're promised all these things. Whatever they say are going to be, the taxes are going to be used for. I'm pretty sure it was like schools and stuff like that. But they always say these things, but no one wants to actually pay the taxes. No one wants to, and most people don't think beyond, the 5 feet in front of them. They're not worried about what the implications will be down the road, and frankly, why should they? They should think that their government's going to be on their side. At least they're not going to be gouging them for every little Mountain Dew or Diet Coke they drink. It's just it goes against everything that America is founded on: freedom and limited government and letting the people and free market decide, and the small businesses to have an opportunity to build their American dream. And the government, the mayor of Philadelphia and fellow politicians are basically saying, screw your American dream. We're taking your money. Oh, well, suck it up. So lastly, let's just get to it. The dumb leftist comment of the day. This comment comes at you from Rosie O'Donnell. I don't know if you happen to know her. She's usually very outspoken. So she's on Twitter. And she said, quote, "I fully support imposing martial law, delaying the inauguration until Trump is cleared of all charges." So it's interesting that people want to delay the inauguration until people are cleared of charges, considering we just had a candidate who I'm pretty sure she would be a fan of, who was under a open federal Bureau of FBI federal investigation for very serious charges, and you never heard anything back then. But anyway, she also, by the way, used all caps there, so just do your best to imagine a screaming Rosie O'Donnell. So are we supposed to impose martial law every time an Oppo disinformation leaks to the press and there's an unethical fake news organization that publishes it? Because we'd be having martial law every day. What does Rosie propose? Calling off all of the hookers in Moscow to a room to question them? Where were you the night of the July 10th around 11 p.m.? How much water did you drink? What color was your urine? We already have enough to conclude that the dossier was made up of craziness of the highest degree. If you don't know what I was referring to there with the urine, I'm referring to the fact that in this dossier they have, crazy claims like Trump had hookers up in a hotel in Moscow to pee all over each other, or himself, or all over the bed, or over him, or whatever. It's just insanity is what it is. And no one checked this stuff, and it got published anyway. So that's, I believe, what Rosie is referring to, the charges that were in this dossier. And there's no... She wants martial law. I mean, just if that doesn't tell you everything about Rosie O'Donnell and where she's at in life right now. So Rosie obviously hates Trump, and I'm confident that the feeling is reciprocal. If you haven't been paying attention, the left has completely lost it. They've entered into a frenzy. There's plenty of reason to worry about President-elect Trump. Don't get me wrong, but this primarily stems from a realization that progressivism is falling apart. The scratching and clawing, it resembles that of a cornered raccoon, like a 350-pound cornered raccoon. Well, that's it. My name is Derek. This is the Freedom Fix podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I will be back next week. Enjoy your weekend, and happy Martin Luther King Day. Try and do something nice for somebody over the weekend. Don't worry about all of the hostility out there in the country. Try and just be nice to each other, and decency will prevail. This is Derek signing off.